Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Vallen, and this is Astral Sorcery. Today we're going to be going over Constellation. Now, I realize that may not have sounded like proper English, but hey, you know what? We're talking about a chapter, Constellation. So at this point, we're getting into some really advanced stuff, and I'm going to say, here's a little secret tip for you. If you want to do a really quick zoom in to one of these different chapters, just double click and you're zoomed in automatically. You don't have to scroll in anymore. Also, if you want to back out, just click on one of the other tabs and then you can go back to there again by clicking on the knowledge tab and easily go navigate between the different chapters as you like. Just a little tip for those that are now getting into the advanced stuff, and you can lord this over people that take forever to kind of scroll in and out on their their journals. But let's get into Constellation. Now that we have our own new altar here, which of course our celestial altar, we're going to be covering in this episode pretty much everything on here except for the stellar refraction table and the iridescent altar. I'm going to try and get through as much of this as humanly possible. The episode may run a little bit long, but there is a ton of stuff and power obtained through this chapter. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So first and foremost, let's recap. We've got celestial crystals down here. In order to create those, you need to make crystal clusters, which I had covered previously. You just take yourself some kind of rock crystal, toss it in here. Let me grab one of these. And then you take a piece of stardust and throw that in. The two combine together to make yourself some kind of celestial crystal cluster. You wait for that to grow to full size like this is now. You then mine it up, and you get yourself some of these celestial crystals, which are much more powerful in almost every aspect, at least for making them larger, their purity can't get any higher than 100%, but your cutting can't get higher than 100%, but the size can get very, very large, allowing you to accomplish quite a bit more. With that recap covered very quick and easily, you'd think, all right, well, let's just move on to the enhanced collector crystal. No, you can't, because if you look here, you need to actually advance a little bit earlier than that. And there are some other things that you can do before getting to this Starlight Infuser, namely making colored lenses. Colored lenses don't sound like a lot of anything, really. You can make them very simply with your new altar, as you have here, like your ignition lens, your break lens, your damage lens, growth lens, regeneration lens, and your push lens, and so on. Now, a lot of these are very, very powerful indeed, and they may not look it when first obtained. Now keep in mind, by adding colored lenses to a lens, it will therefore slightly dim the starlight effect that you may gain from it. So using those to power a celestial altar or enhance light may prove challenging, or at least not optimal. So therefore, I do not recommend to use those to obtain starlight. Instead, you can use them for their other more powerful uses. Let's start off with the first one, ignition. Now, in order to apply any lens, you can therefore just right-click on one of these lenses as it is, and you'll start seeing the effect here. Now, if it is currently aimed at something, it will therefore create an effect. In this case, I'm in creative. I am being set on fire over and over again because of the lens effect. But as I'm in creative, I'm not taking any damage. So therefore, this is a very easy way of, creating yourself a way of cooking things. For instance, if I throw out some potatoes, I put these down here, you'll notice that they turn into baked potatoes almost instantly. Toss out some wood, they turn into charcoal. But keep in mind that if I place down a block, nothing is going to happen to it. It just kind of, focuses on it or through it, depending upon how I have it set up. But it's not going to actually do anything. It has to just be dropped into the world. But it's a very quick and easy way of cooking things up for yourself. But keep in mind that also the block that it is on may also set you on fire just by being in contact with it. So it's just a dangerous block in itself, but it can be very useful. In order to remove a lens, all you need to do is shift right click. The lens pops off, you can pick it up, it turns back into normal starlight. Now, I also have another one here, the break lens. This one, guess what it does? You put it on, it will break things. Oh, what a mess. So it's just good for, in general, breaking blocks. You can even use it for things like obsidian. It will just take a bit of time in order to do so. Let me place this in an area that it will actually hit it. You see that it starts doing the effects on there. Eventually, in time, it does break the block. There you go. So it's just kind of a useful tool in order to automate some kind of block breakage. Perhaps you'll have a Cobble Gin running. Next one we're going to cover is going to be the Growth Lens, which is going to be phenomenal. You're going to love this one. So let's just put down a piece of sand, a piece of cactus, and it should, there we go, instantly start growing things. You can then break it, harvest, etc. And it works fantastically well. I mean, really, really well. You can make yourself a tree farm out of this. You can make infinite amounts of crops. It's wonderful, all at the power of Starlight, which is really, really good. And here we have the perfect lens for a mob farm, the Damage Lens. Put this one on here. If I bring in, let's say, a cow, I put it in place. Cow starts taking damage and dies very quickly. In fact, it's quite effective. It will activate things that will teleport like Enderman. They will probably try and teleport away. But this is also a magical damage. So if you're attacking things like witches with it, they might be able to out-heal it because of their resistance to said magics. But in general, it's really good. It can be bounced around from one lens to another, therefore creating like this grid of, well, death. And it will injure most things, but not me. If you notice, I am safe from this, but I will be set on fire by the ignition one. So you might want to keep that in mind, that this is actually going to be excellent for a mob farm. It's a mob grinder that won't hurt you. Then, of course, we have the Regeneration Lens, which actually I think isn't quite accurately named. So if I were to take some damage. Okay, so there we go. I have taken a bit of damage. Allow me to actually take a little bit more. There we are. And you'll see that this doesn't actually give me a regeneration effect. It, in fact, gives me just a bunch of heals. See, there's no regeneration effect, and my health meter is now completely full. So it's really good for just healing things in general. If you want to heal up yourself or other entities, it will work in that manner. It will also heal mobs, so it's not good for like mixing in with a mob farm unless you want to also heal them at the same time for some reason. And last but not least, we have the Push Lens, which, as you might expect, will push things. Maybe not players. As you see here, I'm unaffected. But if I were to put things out here like a cow, the cow gets pushed by it, as well as items do. Allow me to drop this sword. It got pushed along with the cow. Thank you for getting in the way, cow, as they always do. And you can see items will get pushed along with it as well. So it's really, really cool like that. Right, so lenses also have another use as a possibility of an ingredient in other recipes, but for now, let's move on to the next biggest step, and that's going to be the Starlight Infuser. This here will require a special setup, as you can see here. Allow me to better demonstrate it in the book, just by clicking on the Starlight Infuser. Of course, it does have a bit of a recipe involved. You will need to use your new altar. And you will need to build this new 7x7 area, which you'll notice it has some blocks underneath, and it looks like some liquid. This one is very different from others in the fact that, one, it requires an archway to be built over each of the sides, and two, it also requires liquid starlight in order for it to function properly. So therefore, you have to have liquid starlight surrounding it completely. If you don't have starlight in all of these 12 empty spaces along the side, then it's not actually going to function. And what is this used for? A lot of things, but first and foremost, it's for making resonating gems, as you see here. In order to make those, you need to take an aquamarine and place it in the infuser. So if I take one, I place it on here, and then I use my resonating wand. Assuming that I have enough time during the night, it should work in order to infuse it and make it a resonating gem. Now, there's a chance it will use up some of the starlight. There's also a chance that it won't use any. In this case, it did not use any because I don't see any kind of like little offshoots on the side. And then you can just continue on making more of these resonating gems, as they're going to be very, very important in making a lot of the most powerful items in this mod. Speaking of, next I'm going to be covering the Ritual Anchor, which is made using a resonating gem as well as a couple of regular glass lens, some glass, stardust, etc. It's not too bad, and you get two of them for it. What does the Ritual Anchor do? Well, I've got one here, And I'm going to actually demonstrate this. Now, what you need to do is it works in conjunction with your ritual pedestal setup. So if you have a preferred like gem, in this case I have Bootes, and Bootes, if you recall, when placed upon a ritual pedestal, will start making mobs or friendly passive farm style mobs in the area start dropping their drops naturally or shedding them without the creatures having to die. By placing this in here, I would normally do that around this altar. Now, this pedestal. The thing is, this pedestal may not be in a very convenient place, or you may need to do this somewhere underground, or just in a more convenient place, and you therefore need to tuck this away, because this entire setup might actually not work very well with what you have in mind. Well, not to worry. You take your ritual anchor 5 blocks above your pedestal, and you place it down. Then you link it to another ritual anchor where you want this to actually take effect. So allow me to put this attuned rock crystal in place. And you'll notice that it starts doing this its special refraction thing here, which if you have lenses, you can therefore take and start placing around. Let's see if I can just build this up here. And then I want to link this and aim it directly back at the ritual pedestal. Now I currently have a collector crystal nearby that is focused on the ritual pedestal. I took a linking tool, connected that to this, and that therefore will show the light. It's difficult to see on the daytime here, but you can see that there is a bit of a beam coming from that to here. And as you start focusing this back onto itself, it'll start creating more of these offshoots of light off of it. Specifically, if you are using a ritual anchor, you will see these more often, and they're always going to be about 3 blocks up. Then you're going to want to click this and link it back onto the ritual pedestal itself, and this will enhance its ability to do so even more. You can see it's getting a bit more powerful, and you'll know that you've reached maximum power, or just about there, when you start seeing lightning bolts form. But that also is dependent upon the crystal that you have. It would have to be of a very high purity and size as well, and of the appropriate, attunement. So in this case, this one's just a regular collector crystal, so it is not attuned to Bootes in this case. Now you don't have to do this. I am just doing this to enhance this so that it is much more appropriate. And you can see here, I have the ability to do one more, I think. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and then focus this back in. There we go. And I now have 5 different lenses, which is the maximum that you should be able to use around here. You can also always put a giant circle of these around there so that anytime that you remove the crystal in the center by shift right clicking and placing it back in, it may have these little beams go out elsewhere. Now right now I just saw a little bit of a lightning bolt, which means that this is a very strong effect, but it is not happening near here. So if I take a cow, drop it down, the cow is not going to drop anything because of this ritual anchor that I have 5 blocks above. Now what I did, I'm actually just going to fly up here to make it a little bit quicker and easier, is go over here, and I went out to this big empty area where all these animals were. And I placed it down over here. You can see it's kind of lighting up the area, and you can see that there are actually bits of leather and eggs being dropped by all sorts of the animals nearby. So if I bring out some more cows, they're going to start dropping leather and beef. The chickens, of course, are dropping chicken feathers and the chicken meat plus the eggs. So it's a really, really good way of making yourself a passive mob farm, and you don't ever have to kill the animals. Just be sure that you have a way of cleaning up the mess. Otherwise, you could create a lot of lag on your server or in your world just by having all these drops all over the place. And what I did is, of course, just use my linking tool to link one of these ritual anchors to the other, and therefore they started. It will then broadcast the effect over here and no longer cease to work no longer work at the original base. But if I break this one, or I unlink it in some way, it will then start doing so back at the home base. So let me actually teleport back up there, and I will just hold up here. There we go, back to the top of the mountain, and I come back down, and the cow here should now start dropping drops. Yep, and it has been already, as well as that sheep might come over and start doing this. So in order to stop this, all you need to do is just shift right click with an empty hand, pick up your rock crystal, and you may, as I said before, need to realign your lenses. As you see here, it's currently attempting to create a new lens spot over in this area where there isn't one. So as I said, you may need to readjust those if you so desire. That's just going to enhance its power and how strong of an effect it has. And keep in mind that that is just one example using Bootes, so that I can therefore use a ritual pedestal with a tuned rock crystal to any number of the different constellations to acquire their different effects and use it remotely, even underground, therefore allowing me much greater benefits at the places that I want, instead of just having to always be open to the sky. All right, so that's not everything though. There's plenty more Starlight Infuser can do. Let's start with tools. I have a crystal sword here. I want to infuse it. I put it on here. I then use my resonating wand. Of course, I have all of these chambers are filled with starlight. I right click with my wand and it will start using up all of the liquid. Infusing tools and weapons is not a cheap process. It is very expensive. As you can see here, oh, it created a flare. It now has a infused crystal sword. Now, the cutting on one was the same as the other. You'll notice that the stats are the same. 3 attack speed, 14 attack damage, and the size, purity, and cutting are all the same. I stayed in creative specifically just so I could show that to you, as it creates a duplicate when I place it on this. But it has an added effect. When you hit a creature, if you can hit a creature, unlike I just did, it will create this massive burst like that. It will do an area of effect of damage from that strike. So if I run up here and I jump into third person view so you can better see, hit this guy, you'll see that massive cloud area, and it's only on that plane. So if there's something down here that's only 1 block high, it wouldn't get hit at all. So that's something to keep in mind with it. And if you notice, when I do use it, there is a recharge animation on my screen. Allow me to run up here, get this sheep, and the recharge takes like a couple seconds. Now, anytime that I am striking an enemy, and it has that, it gives that special effect from a tool or weapon, it doesn't use up any of the durability on there. The size or cutting, or rather the cutting actually does not go down. It stays at 100%. So you don't need to worry about that for the special effects. But if you use the tool regularly, like if I swipe immediately after doing that special effect from the sword, then you will start affecting the cutting as you would normally. Now there are other tools, namely an axe, a pick, and a shovel. Now you want to use these with care, as they are going to be very useful and also very destructive. Alright, back down here in the field, I have an Infused Axe. Its special ability is very amazing. Here I am in game mode 0 or survival. I just chop any of the tree, and any of the connected bits of the tree get harvested and brought towards you, not necessarily on your person, but they will be directed towards you, and you can then pick up any remaining drops. And if you just wait for it to recharge, use it again, you can then just harvest entire forests with this thing. Now if I start using this before it's ready, you'll see it just chopped a piece of wood instead of harvesting the whole tree. But now that it's recharged, if I use this, pow, it will take all connected trees together and just kind of eat them in a large area. It's kind of like a vein miner for trees in a way. So if they're connected, you can definitely get a lot of use out of this tool. Now you might also be thinking, well, what if I have 2 infused axes? Can I use them alternating? Well, there is a caveat for this, and it was taken into account. So if I use one of them, you notice both of them recharge. So tools of the same type cannot be spammed together. So making multiple copies of them will only benefit you if you just don't want to sharpen them as often. But as before, just by using it, you notice nothing on the cutting has gone down because I only used the special abilities. If I were to have used it to chop down the entire tree normally, then its cutting percentage would drop. Now, what else do we have? We have an infused crystal shovel. This one, you're going to want to watch your feet because it will harvest everything sort of like a vein miner, usually in like a 1 layer, but it also can go deeper depending upon what it is. Now, this is all grass, so it's going to harvest the grass and leave this dirt block. So I'm going to stand on the dirt block just by left clicking there and pow, it harvested all the grass in this large area. Now, if I wait for that to recharge and I use it on dirt, it will take dirt in a large area, potentially making me fall a large distance if there was a lot of dirt below me, and it will take it in an area. Now, using it on stone or something that a shovel is not usually used for, it will not affect those. But it can be very easy to start shoveling a lot of sand, dirt, or grass in an area that you want to. Just be aware that if you use it, it will take all of those of a similar style. So if you need a bunch of sand only, it will eat a bunch of sand. If you need a bunch of dirt only, it will eat a bunch of dirt, and so on. All right, and last but not least of the infused tools is the crystal pickaxe. Now this is going to be amazing. It doesn't work like the other ones. If I use it to start digging, it just digs, which is great because that gives you control over what you're trying to accomplish. What this allows you to do is more or less try and find different ores. If I right click, you'll start seeing these little effects in an area, allowing me to find out where the nearest ores are. So if I look directly down and use this, oh, it looks like there's a bunch of coal down below me here. Let's just dig down a bit. And if I wait for it to recharge, use it again. Oh, the coal is very close by. So let's start digging in this direction here. And look at that, there's a bunch of coal. Just as simple as that. Right click and you can see it tells you that there's a bunch of coal in that area. Now, just for an example, I have spawned myself a bit of some other ores so that I can place these down and show you guys. So as before, just by using the right click ability on this one or using its special ability will not use up any of its cutting percentage, but just by using it in general will use its cutting and therefore dull over time. Now, just for a demonstration, I have gold, iron, lapis. I put these down, I right click, and you see there are the animations for each of them so that you have an idea of what it looks like just to try and find the ores as far or as close as they may be. And there you go. It just kind of gives you a general idea. They aren't exact, but if you want to find specific ores, this can definitely help you as a tool. You could potentially bring this along in addition to a different pick if you so desired, but therefore, you have to carry multiple things. But hey, nothing wrong with having a pick that is also a divining rod. All right, so what else can we do with this new infusion process? One of which is to make another lens, a spectral lens. It does require resonating gems, so it is a bit more unique than the rest of them in that aspect. But what this allows you to do is actually progress or project starlight through walls. So let's give an example here. All right, so here I have a collector crystal. If I right click on this, I can link it to this lens. Then I rotate around, right click on the lens. I can link it to another block. Let's say this block here. There we go. And it should have turned, but it's not going to actually direct in any direction because it can't at this point. Now you may see that there is a bit of a beam of light coming to this lens, but it can't project over onto that because there is a wall in the way. Well, if I put a colored lens on here for the spectral lens, it will allow the beam to pass through it, thus allowing certain items to, well, just be able to project starlight through walls as you need to. Then, of course, you can always place down another lens with whatever style color lens on it you want, or just so that it can progress, as you need. And as before, just a shift right click to remove it, and it turns back into a regular starlight. All right, so we've covered a whole bunch of this stuff so far, but we still have plenty more to go. The crystal prism, made as such with some of those new resonating gems, as well as some sort of rock crystal or attuned crystal as you desire. In here, we'll make the Prism Lens. Prism Lens is very similar to a regular lens, except instead of only being able to direct this to a single block, you can turn a Prism Lens to work in a different manner. Allow me to place down a Prism Lens here. And you'll notice that it has this little crystal effect inside. It's really nice. You take this, either a lens or a collector crystal, direct it at the prism lens, and it will start accepting starlight, right? No big deal. I'm going to color this with regeneration, just so you guys can see where it's going to be directed. Now I can take this, and I can direct it to multiple locations. Just by clicking there, rolling off and back, I can aim it at multiple spots. It will split the different effects. Allow me to put down a few blocks in order to direct this to. Take this and click it there. Take this and click it there. And you can see that it is now directed at multiples instead of just one. So it kind of acts like a collector crystal, but instead it can just split off the beams. So this can work really well, especially for some of the new colored lenses that you've been introduced to, like creating a farm area or just a large regeneration zone, or even a mob farm style where you've got just damaging beams shooting everywhere. So you've got a lot of options with this, and it can definitely help you to split off the effects instead of just having to make more and more of these crystals, which can be very challenging. And don't worry, we're going to get into that shortly. But one more thing before we do, and that is going to be the illumination wand. Using one of those resonating gems on the table, this is one of the things I highly recommend you get. It has 2 uses. Well, 3 to be exact. It basically, allow me to go grab mine quick. It basically has 2 different modes. One, once you've crafted this up, is going to be to place down a little beacon. You probably have seen some of these little light effects around. Its default is yellow. The other option is to shift right-click a block. And if that block doesn't have any special data in it, it should turn it into some kind of light source and somewhat transparent. So you can use this on a lot of them. In fact, you can even use it on some other blocks as you might see fit. And just shift right click again to turn it back into what it was. Now here's another thing though. I turn that into that. Let's see. I can't mine it anymore. It is now blast resistant. Yes, you can use this to kill the wither. It's very convenient for that. But that's not all, my friends. There is plenty more. And of course, as stated before, if you want to get rid of these lights, you need to have a block. Allow me to grab this one here, place the block down, pick it back up, and it is gone. So you have to just replace something in that place. Otherwise, you can change your illumination wand's colors just by taking some kind of dye with it, putting it in here, and then I can now cast myself a lime green light, which, might be better to your liking. One last thing you should know when using your illumination wand is that if you are using it on something like one of these structures, you use it to light up one of the current blocks that are used in it, it will deactivate this. So you don't want to use the ability to convert the blocks into light sources on any of your structures that are required for altars and such. And at this point, we come to the potentially most important thing, and that is how to make yourself collector crystals. And not just any collector crystals, the fantastic kind. So by opening your book on collector crystals, which is of course down here, you would think that the enhanced collector one is down here. It's not actually. Both of them are going to really be here. You've got your main recipe using resonating gems. You can use either an attuned rock crystal or an attuned celestial crystal. Which you have learned to make from these celestial crystal clusters here. And that will make you either the white or the blue variant, which I do recommend you just go with the blue variant because it's going to be more powerful in general. Then you'll create yourself a collector crystal. And as you see here, I have one in my hand. Place it down. It is simply, these are actually harvestable. Unlike the ones that are found underneath temples, you can actually pick these up and grab it and take it with you. It'll have its stats still saved on here, so if you're going to use this, you're going to want to make sure that it is, currently as excellent as you can make it for whatever needs you need it for, and it will need to be infused if you are going with one of these here. So don't forget to make sure to infuse your crystal with your giant altar here as you need to beforehand, because each one will have a different effect. Now, as far as Starlight, yes, I could just place one down here, and then I can take my linking tool and link it to this, therefore giving myself a bunch of Starlight, which is great. I could even turn these ones off. Let's link this over here, and we'll link this one over here, so that the light no longer comes from that one. I look on this place, and I have a lot of light. And what time of day is it? Let's change it to midday, and therefore if I look here, I'm getting a lot of light from this. So you can see here I have a regular celestial or collector crystal, which they're both Dissidia, I believe. Yes, this one's Dissidia. This one is also Dissidia. Putting it on here, you can see there's a lot less to be had. And this one is max stats for a rock crystal collector crystal. And this is max stats for a celestial collector crystal. And therefore there's a massive difference. But You can further enhance the amount of starlight you can gain from this by building yourself a specialized altar. So, I'm going to actually remove a couple of these off the side and replace them, because as it is, they're only giving me a very minute amount of starlight with this new altar. So I'm going to therefore replace this with my new Collector Crystal altar, which, if you look down here, is under Enhanced Collector Crystal. It is this setup, which is similar to your previous one. It will require some starlight around it, but it doesn't use up the starlight, it focuses it instead. So you will need to make a structure underneath, as well as on the sides, and then put your collector crystal of choice 2 blocks above, and it will enhance that even further. So once you have your structure complete, you should see these particles coming up from the starlight, or the liquid starlight here, but it does require a celestial collector crystal. A regular collector crystal will not work in this manner, so you do have to have the advanced blue stone in order to do so. And it needs to be 1 block above the chiseled marble in the center. And for those that are trying to see what is the central block down here that is above the marble at the bottom, it is an engraved marble, same as one of these cornerstones here is what's underneath. Let me break that, and then you can see it is currently working with that in place. Now, to give an idea, I have the same exact celestial collector crystal here that is Decidia, maximum and maximum. Now, if I change this to midday, which is going to be the weakest time that we have, you can see that there's very little being given at all. Nothing is currently connected to the altar. So let me connect this to here, and you can now see that it is giving almost maximum for this altar to make this recipe here, which is only about lined up with this here. Now, if I unlink this, and then I relink this one here with the new setup, you'll notice it's maxed out. It gives considerably more. So this will help focus a lot of starlight into your creations and make things that much more powerful. So if you do need that extra boost, this is definitely a way to go that is going to really save you a lot of space, materials, and also just make things look really, really cool. And now, my friends, one more item that we're going to be covering, the tree beacon. The tree beacon is basically a way of making yourself a tree farm. Now, of course, there are many different ways that you can use to collect the results of this when you place one of these down, which the tree beacon, I should say, the recipe is as such. It's not too bad. It's actually very cheap. But you place it down, and you'll need to get some saplings of the trees you'd like to collect the drops from. So for instance, I have an oak tree sapling that I'm going to place over here. I've got a spruce sapling I'm going to place here, and you just need to have them relatively close to the tree beacon. If you have too many of them, they will be unaffected by its abilities. Now, of course, you can wait for these tree saplings to grow on their own. Of course, you can see the green particles of the area that it affects, or you can kind of speed things up a bit. And when you do, you'll start seeing they turn into a ghostly version of themselves as such. And they are going to slowly, very slowly, over time, you see that the green particles are gathering in the center here. I'll make it nighttime just so that it's a little bit easier for you to see. If you just wait, the drops from these will slowly start to fall down, like saplings, logs, and or apples in the case of an oak tree. Now, there are ways to speed this up and enhance it further by, you guessed it, adding starlight. So if I place down one of these celestial crystals and link it to this, and now I don't have it linked up with one of those, which could be extremely powerful, but you'll notice that the green particles are now moving much faster, and it is dropping little bits of the trees themselves. This is definitely a way of enhancing your tree beacon so that it can be very powerful. If you have yourself perhaps a bunch of liquid starlight pushing a bunch of these items, or even you're pushing lenses, you can gather them in a vanilla style into a chest, and I found that perhaps 3 saplings in an area over a good period of time will probably give you 2 to 3 double chests full of logs, saplings, apples, and such over the period of the life of the set of these that are going to be used. And slowly, very slowly over time, you'll start seeing these disappear and start turning back into, well, nothingness. They'll just kind of slowly be consumed by the tree beacon. If for some reason you do want to stop this, all you have to do is break the tree beacon, and there you go. the trees turn back into normal trees, and you would have your tree beacon back if you just harvest it with a pick as before. And as you can see, just in that short amount of time, I got a whole lot of stuff. No need to run around chopping trees anymore, because you can have it set up for yourself. And there you have it, a wonderful start into the Constellation chapter, or, well, a large majority of it. Next time, I'll be covering the refraction table as well as the final altar, allowing you to progress to the last chapter. If you enjoyed this bit by bit, be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, spread the mischief to others if you think they'll enjoy this content too. Until next time, folks, I'll see ya.